All right, so good morning. Thank you everybody for joining me. My name is Justin Meyer and welcome to COVID-19 update for small businesses. Um, I want to welcome everybody who could make it. Again, this is being recorded. It'll be put on Facebook and hopefully YouTube as well later on. And this is a changing area of law. So what we're talking about today, things are going to be changing a little bit, and hopefully we can get the best information possible to you. If you have questions, there's a chat window right here, and I'm going to encourage you to I have it open. If you have questions, I encourage you to just feel free and put a question there. I'll stop periodically to kind of try and answer them as we go through different topics. I'll stop and answer any questions about that topic, and we'll go and go through as much as we can. A little bit about me. I'm an attorney. I'm licensed in Florida, and New York, and New Jersey. I'm licensed in some of the federal courts as well. I work with businesses and cover a lot of areas. This is what I do. This is the area that I get into with understanding what the law is for small businesses. And this is a state and federal issue. Just so we're clear, I'm going to be talking about general information today. I can't give legal advice in this webinar. I can't sit down and I can't analyze a document or anything for anybody specifically today. The chat, I know some of the people here are clients. The chat is going to be for general questions only, please. If you have specific questions, you'll have my contact information at the end. I would absolutely encourage you to give me a call or shoot me an email and we'll talk, but I can't answer specific questions here. So what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about the Families First Coronavirus Response Act. That's a family leave law. We're going to talk about the CARES Act. That's the law that got passed on Friday, and some things are still being figured out there. Talk a little bit about unemployment coverage. We'll talk about Florida disaster loans, and there are a couple other topics that are going to get thrown in as well. All right. Let's start with the family leave aspect of this whole thing. Starting on April 1st, that's 2 days from now, there is a new family leave paradigm that's in effect. Okay? There is a federal family leave law that is now in effect that is paid medical leave. Okay? All employees, whether they started working for you yesterday or started working for you 2 years ago, and I'm going to get into why that distinction matters in a minute, are entitled to 2 weeks or 80 hours of paid sick leave at full pay. The reason why it says 80 hours or 2 weeks is because if they would normally work 50 hours a week, they get 50 hours the first week, they get 30 hours of pay the second week. So make sure you understand it is only up to 80 hours over 2 weeks. So if their normal work week is 100 hours for 2 weeks, they only get 80 hours. And they get it for three ways. If they're quarantined, state, federal, local government order, if they're quarantined by a healthcare provider, or if they're experiencing symptoms and waiting for a diagnosis. This isn't, I had a cold, I'm taking a couple days off. This isn't, I broke my finger, I have to take off a couple of weeks. It is only if you are quarantined because of the virus. Okay? 80 hours or 2 weeks of paid sick leave at 2/3 pay. If they can't work because they're caring for an individual subject to quarantine, or they're caring for a child under 18 whose school or daycare is closed due to COVID-19. That sound familiar? It should. If you've got kids and you're in Florida, you're in New York, you're in New Jersey, you're in about 30 states, you're affected by that. This may include, as I said, all employees in Florida and in New York. If they are on your payroll, they may qualify for this. They may be eligible for now up to 10 additional weeks of paid leave at 2/3 pay. This is where it matters when they were employed by you. If they were only employed in the last 20 days, they don't qualify for this. They have to have been working for you for more than 30 days. Employees who just joined or who are being hired now do not qualify for the additional 10 weeks. Now, here's some news that's good and a little bit tough. If you have fewer than 50 employees, you'll be able to apply for an exemption. We don't know what the guidelines for the exemption are. It's going to basically be that the amount of money that you have to pay would risk you being put out of business. The Department of Labor has promised that they will get a list of what the requirements are. They have not done so yet. So we're waiting. And as soon as we know what they are, we'll let people know. But as of Friday, they had not yet published any kind of guidelines as to this. We just know that it exists. So here's the good news. The pay is capped. Full pay is capped at $511 per day, two-thirds pay at $200 per day. Okay, 2,000 total. Full pay is capped at 5,110 total for 2 weeks, and two-thirds pay is capped at 2,000 total for 2 weeks and 12,000 total for 12 weeks. How do you get to this? Well, you take the higher of the regular rate of pay for minimum wage, and you pay them per day for the amount of hours they would normally work per day until you get to either their max pay or $511. If they are part-time, you're going to have to average out how much they would normally work. So if you're dealing with part-time employees, you're going to average it out. You're going to need to figure out how much they would normally work and what the average time would be. Okay. Here's the other big thing you need to know. There are notice requirements. There are new posters that need to be put up alongside any of your other required posters. Except that doesn't work anymore because how many people have people working from home? You're going to have to email or mail the posters to those people. We have them available on our website. You go to rosenthalmeyer.com, you click on resources, you'll see the FFCRA posters, and that's where they are. If you have questions or you need a copy of them, I can also email them to you. They're available as PDFs. Once you get them, like I said, you can put them, hang them up next to your minimum wage poster online, or you can email them or mail them to your employees if you are not working from a central location. Obviously, some of us, I'm in my office right now because it's just me and I've got my door closed. But a lot of people are working from home. They don't have access to a bulletin board anymore. All right, before we move on to the CARES Act, I want to see if there's any questions here on the family leave issue. All right. None? Okay. CARES Act. This is the law that everybody's been talking about. It passed the Senate on Wednesday. It passed the House on Friday. The president signed it into law the same day. This is the $1,200 check law that everybody knows about because it's the one that gives everybody $1,200 and everybody's talking about it. There's a lot of other things though. This is a pretty detailed law. All right. We're going to talk more about unemployment. But what this does in part is this gives employers a benefit if they don't fire their employees. Okay? One question we've been getting asked. Hold on. I'll come back to it. We have a question on school closure. So, Alonzo, if you want to just type in your question. So, Alonzo saying employees get paid for the Leave Act. Yes, if, and I'll go back to that slide really quickly. They're entitled to 2 weeks at two-thirds pay. That's up to 200. That's capped at $200 a day or $1,000 a week if their child's school is closed and they can't work. Now, let me stress, there are people who can work during this. They're working. They are not taking leave. This is for people who are saying, I can't work, I need family leave for 2 weeks. Um, and then you have, for employees who've been with you for 30 or more days, you have people they can get an additional 10 weeks of pay at, again, another at $1,000 a week if they. Now, the $1,000 a week is the cap. Let me stress this. If you're paying somebody minimum wage, hold on, I'll pull up a calculator real quick. Um, if you're paying, let's say you're paying $10 an hour, or let's call it $9.50 an hour for 40 hours. That's 380. So the 500, they're going to get the full 500, or they're not going to get the full 500. They're going to get 380. But if you take 380 divided by or times 0.6, sorry, wrong button. You get 250. So 2/3 of 380 is higher than the $200. So it's capped at 200. So you would have to pay that. The additional 10 weeks may only apply only will apply, but you can apply for an exemption. Okay. And again, none of this applies if they're still working for you. If they're online, none of it applies. This is only when they are not working for you anymore. This is only when somebody says, I can't do my job. I have to take care of my kids. So if you don't terminate your employees, getting back to the CARE Act, if you don't terminate your employees, if you keep them employed, there's a payroll tax credit that comes off of the employer's side of the payroll taxes. First 50% of the first $10,000, 50% of the first $10,000 in salary and health benefits. You're talking about a $5,000 credit paid to each qualifying employee. We'll get back to that between March 13th and December 31st. So there is a bit of a back date there. Okay. So to qualify, it's not for everybody. So if you're up and running and everything is fine, you don't get this payroll tax credit. Not for it doesn't get to everybody. You have to either partially or fully shut down because of a shutdown order. Orange County declared business as non-essential. Okay? The jewelry store being declared non-essential means they've shut down. They qualify for this. The restaurant that has partially shut down because they can no longer do dining room service, they would probably qualify for it. However, you have a doctor's office that's fully up and running. They don't qualify for this because they're essential. Um, Ben, I see your question. I will get back to that. Give me a minute because I'll come back to that. The other thing is, if you haven't been shut down, you need to be able to show you have a gross receipts decline of more than 50%. Here's where this gets tricky. What if you're a new business? What if you started in the last half of 2019? Well, you have no decline in gross receipts from first quarter of 2019 to the first quarter of 2020. You didn't exist. So this is going to be a little trickier, and they're going to probably have to work something out, but they haven't gotten there yet. What's a qualified employee? If you have under 100 employees, everybody's a qualified employee. If you have more than 100 employees, people who are on shutdown or slowdown projects. So this is where if you have a partial shutdown, employees who you're paying even though they're not able to work, they would qualify here. Whereas employees you are paying and they are working and they're billing and they're bringing in income, they would not qualify here. This is going to get this gets a little confusing. So let me just back up again a bit again. If you have employee under 100 employees and you have been shut down by a federal order or a state order or a local order, every employee's salary qualifies. You have over 100 employees, only those employees whose work has stopped because of the shutdown order qualify. It's something. It's going to be a bit on a case by case basis. This is where you're going to definitely need a good accountant to help you with the forms for the payroll tax credits. There will be several payroll tax credits coming. I would predict several more. So I would also say having a good accountant this year is going to be very helpful. The CARES Act also gives out business loans. There's a lot of stuff going on here, and I've got some of it in the slides. I'm going to talk about some of the other stuff, but there's a lot going on with the business loans. And again, this is also still being figured out. SBA has not come up with everything yet, so we're waiting to hear. So the SBA is still coming up with some of the guidelines. These are forgivable business loans. You must have fewer than 500 employees to qualify. Loan proceeds, in order to be forgivable, have to go to employee salaries, including payroll support. So if you're paying for health insurance, that counts. If you're paying for certain other benefits, that counts. Has to go to rent or a mortgage or utility bills or interest on other debts. You can't use this money to buy everybody in the office new technology. You can't use this money to buy everybody in the office new phones and have the debt forgiven. You can still use the loan for that. As of now, it looks like you can still use the loan for that, but you will have to pay it back. There are still questions. It looks like a $10,000 grant that you will qualify for when you apply. And that is not money that you'll have to pay back. It's basically a $10,000 advance. And if you don't qualify for the loan, they deny you for the loan, then you still get the advance. Like I said, this is still all being figured out. What's your eligibility? You have to have fewer than 500 employees unless you have more, and there's some exceptions there. You have to be substantially affected by COVID-19. That's vague, and it's going to be a case by case basis. Supply chain distributions. You're a toilet paper wholesaler and you can't buy toilet paper right now. That qualifies. You've got employee issues. How many of your employees are taking leave, and all of a sudden you can't get them into you can't get them in. So all of these are things that qualify. If you have a decrease in sales, you have to close the business temporarily. So, and from Ben, you read that there must be a good faith statement that we're affected by the crisis. Yeah, that's true. Most people can make that statement pretty easily. I think you're going to be hard pressed to find anybody who can't make that statement. Most people are going to be affected by this in some way or another. I would be very surprised if at the end of the day there are people who aren't affected by this in some form or fashion. You do need to be able to show what you will need to be able to show what that is to get the loan, but look, I'm not going to tell you can go ahead and apply for every grant. And again, I can't give legal advice here because it varies for every business. Um, I'm not going to tell you to go ahead and apply for every grant. You're going to qualify for every grant. I'm going to tell you that you don't lose much in applying, and most businesses are going to be affected in some form or fashion. I think you're going to be very hard pressed to find one that's not. All right. The loans are issued by the SBA lenders. They're not obviously not issued by the SBA at all. My understanding right now is all SBA lenders are going to be issuing these loans. It's not going to just be one or two. We've heard from several SBA lenders already that they're issuing the loans and that they're already starting the paperwork. You can do some of the paperwork online. The application is relatively easy for some of the bridge loans. And what I've heard is there's already 30,000 applications for some of them. It is very possible to get to do this, and a lot of businesses are going to be. And even though you may think today you're not affected, you want to keep this in mind because the longer this goes, the more it will affect you. CARES Act also does a couple of other important things, one of which that I want to draw your attention to is it waives the 10% early withdrawal penalty from qualified retirement accounts for 100,000 up to $100,000, as long as it's made for a coronavirus related purpose. Now, I'm not advocating taking money out of your 401k to keep your business or your IRA to keep your business alive, but if you're going to, you can do it without the early withdrawal penalty. And that's important to note. Oh, that should be January 1, 2021. I apologize. Read these slides 4 times too. I want to get back to a question that Ben had before. Um, any changes in how we handle terminations with cause that are replaced by another new employee? So the answer is no, except for where it's yes. If you are firing an employee for cause because they are bad at their job, this doesn't change anything. If you are firing an employee who is bad at their job, there's nothing new here. If you are firing an employee because they come to you and they say, I need some time off, um, because I have a sick parent or I have a child at home, that is not a for cause. You can't. That's not going to work as a for cause termination. Um, but if they're not on time, if they're not doing the work they need to get done, you can still terminate an employee. If they're working from home and you say you have to, so I'll take my own career or my own industry as an example. Some law firms have billing requirements, and law firms have been telling their employees, we don't care that you're working from home, you still need to bill 40 hours a week, 35 hours a week, whatever it is. That is still a valid requirement. If they're not meeting that, you are well within your rights to terminate them. If people are not doing their job, you are 100% within your rights to terminate them. That is for cause, and that doesn't affect anything. Where it might benefit them is unemployment. We'll get into that in a moment. Um, but if you have an employee who's not doing their job the way they're supposed to be, if they're showing up late or they're logging on late and they're not getting their work done, you're free to fire them. You do not have to keep employees right now. Annual reports. If you know me, you've heard me talk about these in Florida. They are due on May 1st, except not anymore. They are now due on or before June 30th, 2020. They've extended them. If you filed it already, great. You're ahead of the curve. You're not like most people, including myself, who waits until the last week of April to file them. They are now due June 30th, 2020. I don't see this getting extended again, though it's possible. I don't like to predict things. But this is already a 2-month extension, and I don't think it's going to get pushed back much farther based on the latest guidance that we've heard. But at some point, you're going to have to do them. It is just a nice way to know that they've pushed everything back a little bit. All right, let's talk about unemployment a little bit. And I apologize for those of you who are not in Florida. We're going to talk about Florida unemployment here. Some of this is going to be the same across state lines. Um, Florida has not yet changed its eligibility requirements. So if you have a new employee, they may not qualify for unemployment, even if they qualify for family leave. Um, the federal government is giving $600 in unemployment. That's a thing that's been discussed. But in order to get that $600, you already have to qualify for state unemployment. There's an exception to that. I'm going to get to that in the next slide. But in order to qualify for the $600 federal, you need to get the state unemployment. So what that means is if you're going to fire all of your employees and they're going to be able to qualify for unemployment, they'll get an additional $600 on top of anything they get from the state. So Florida's weekly maximum is $275. If they get $275 from Florida, they get a total of $875. If they get $175 from Florida, they get $775. They get, pick a number. Whatever they get an additional $600 from the federal government. It is an add-on. But going back to the question before, if you fire somebody for cause and they do not qualify for unemployment in New York, in Florida, in anywhere, they do not then qualify for the $600. The federal $600 bonus or add-on, whatever you want to call it, is for people who qualify for unemployment first. It is not going to benefit people who don't qualify. So if they are fired, if they're terminated for cause and they don't apply for unemployment, or they challenge or you challenge their unemployment determination, they will not qualify for unemployment, and they will not qualify for the additional $600. What this does, though, one thing that's worth noting is the federal government is now going to also give unemployment to gig workers, contractors, freelancers, people who normally wouldn't qualify for it before. And I had somebody else tell me they always qualified for unemployment. They just had to pay into unemployment, which is true, and a lot of freelancers don't. A lot of freelancers do not pay into unemployment. What they do is they keep their money and they don't pay into it. So they don't qualify for unemployment in a time like this when they're not working. Federal government will give you unemployment, and the logistics of this still have not been 100% worked out. To the best of my, have not been 100% worked out. We're still working on it. But if you are a freelancer, you're working as a gig worker, Uber or Instacart's pretty busy right now. DoorDash is pretty busy right now. But some of the gig economy, or if you're a contractor and you're out of work, federal unemployment will give you $600 plus one half the state maximum benefit. So $275 is the Florida state maximum benefit. One half of that is $138 and change. $738. That's what the federal government will give you. That is entirely federal money. It is not at all state money. So if you have to determine if in your layoffs you have to lay off contractors or 1099 individuals, they do have a support system. The reason why I bring this up is because there are people who aren't willing to lay off their employees until they know that they're going to continue to get paid. And this shows that there is a way to make sure they are still getting paid. I haven't seen anything like this for New York yet. I don't know if it's going to exist or not. I would imagine it will. But Florida has already started with disaster loans. And these are short-term loans that are interest-free for a year. They are not forgiven. They do have to be paid back. The expectations they get paid back in about a year. After that first year is up, they do start generating interest at 12% a year. The loan is up to $50,000, though you can apply for more. You can apply for $100,000 if you need it, and if you can show good cause as to why you need it. In order to be eligible, you have to have between 2 and 100 employees. Let me stress a couple of things as we go through all of this. 200 employees for eligibility. Must have been established prior to March 9, 2020, which is the date of the state of emergency in Florida. Any prior bridge loans that you have, you must have already paid back. So if you got one for the hurricane a couple of years ago and you never paid that back, you're not eligible for this. You have to be completely paid off, and you have to apply by May 8th, 2020. I want to point out a difference. I hope you can see my mouse. Let me annotate it here. One big difference right here. Didn't actually show up. Hold on. Yeah. Hope that's clear. You must have between 2 and 100 employees for Florida disaster loans. The federal guidelines do not have the same requirements. The federal guidelines do not have any of this 2 and 100 employee guideline. In fact, to qualify for the federal, you don't need any employees. So the benefit here for the Florida loans, if you're an LLC and you have 3 employees, you can qualify. But if you're an LLC and or a corporation and you're only salary and you're the only people on payroll or not on payroll, if you're an LLC, are people taking membership distributions, you qualify for the federal loans. You will not qualify for the Florida disaster loan. So you have to make sure you understand the difference. If you have one person on payroll, you're not going to qualify for these Florida disaster loans. And this also comes back to 1099 contractors. If a lot of the people you're using are 1099 contractors, you may not qualify for the disaster loans as well. None of this is all going to be, some of this will be business as usual and some of it won't. Things will be changing. But there's going to be a question, I'm sure, here as this goes forward of what concept of whether they're going to loosen that restriction at all. I don't predict that they will. I think these are pretty set. This is not a new program. In order to get the Florida disaster loan, you do have to be able to document economic losses. 100% you have to be able to document economic losses. They're going to be looking for balance sheets. They're going to be looking for anything else. But you will have to document any kind of economic loss to show that that's why you need the loan. Okay, so are there any? So here's our contact information. You can go to our website again. This will all be up on Facebook a little later today. I do want to stop and ask if there are any questions, and I'll also give my email address out, which I thought was on the slide, and I realized it's not. My email address is jmeyerj@rosenthalmeyer.com. If you have other questions, you can always email me. If you can't find the posters, let me know, and I'll make sure you get them. But they are on our website. If you click on the resources button at the top, you'll see it. So I'll take any questions. Yes, the posters are required for New York. They're required statewide. Nationwide. Sorry. These are federal posters. Any state in which you are doing business, these posters are required. And if you have employees in multiple states, because they're working from home, again, you're going to need to email it to them. This is going to be a different thing. These posters are going to be a little different. The big issue with the posters is going to be the big issue here for the posters is going to be how do you get them to your employees? The rule has always been put them in the break room where everybody can see it. Put them in the break room. But what do you do if you don't have a break room anymore? You have to make sure they get them. Email them to everybody. If email doesn't work because you have people who don't use email, you're gonna have to put them in the post office. and mail them that way. Put a stamp on it and mail them. This is going to be a slightly different process than other things, um, just because it's a different setup. We're dealing with a different time. We're dealing with work, a lot more remote workers. Um, this is going to be harder, for lack of a better term. Um, Donna, I do see your questions. That's getting more specific to your situation than I can really answer here. Um, why don't you give us a call either after this or a little later today, and either Matt or I will be available to go over it with you. Um, so where we are today is not necessarily where we're going to be in a week. And the reason I can say that is because, again, we don't even know what the Department of Labor regs are going to be for the additional 10-week exemption. So that's going to come. That's going to happen. What we're talking about today is not going to be the final statement. Unfortunately, things are going to continue to change, and what I've heard from people in the legislature and statements that they've made is that this isn't the end. This is not the final relief act. There's going to be more coming. So this law is going to be changed. Whether this law is going to change or whether there's going to be additional things passed, truth is we just don't know yet. I'm very bad at predicting the law, and we're going to need to try and figure out a way to do that. Things are changing. I will tell you, as an example, in New York, you can't file a lawsuit right now. In Florida, that's not the case. But in New York right now, you can't file a lawsuit. The courts are basically closed to new filings unless they're an emergency. So that will change obviously eventually, but you do want to keep things like that in mind. Um, I will I will keep people up to date though. We will continue to send out probably weekly updates via email as things change so that people are aware of what's going on. And if you have individual questions, as always, Matt and I are both here, and we're more than happy to answer any questions that you have. Um, any other questions for me before we wrap up today? All right. I will probably be doing another one of these. It's just a question of when. It's as things change, I will continue to do these, um, and as more questions come up. So, like I said, if you missed any of this or you want to just watch it again because you think I'm so fascinating to listen to, you can absolutely watch it. It'll be up on Facebook a little later on today. And I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you all very much for watching. And have a great day. I'm going to go ahead and end the meeting now.